whether that's something that you should be doing yourself, or is this somebody else's, is this something that somebody else can do? I'm guilty of always saying yes. So when it comes to that area, I know a lot about it being very stressful because I say yes to everything. And then when I'm in the moment, I'm stressed. And who's here to help me? Who's here to support me? Nobody but myself, right? So you have to start learning to say no to certain things, not because you want to be horrible, but sometimes you just have to prioritize what you need to do. Once you've got that all in a nice order, you can start ticking it off. And it feels very nice to put a tick next to something when you've completed it. So that keeps you having positive energy as well. And then the third rule is simply just do it. I don't know if you've heard of the famous American football coach, Art Williams, and he actually inspired the slogan for Nike, which is just do it. And he says, it doesn't matter. You can give all the excuses in the world. You can say, as soon as I get to the top of that hill, I'm going to be able to run really fast. Okay, great, just do it. Just do it. Because if you dwell on it for too long, we procrastinate. So I think with that being said, it will definitely help managing your stress, help to manage your social life. Really do make time for other people in your life and your friends. It's important to have those people that want to support you and be there for you. And just make sure that you look after yourself in that process. I think that's probably how I would round up my main points.
That's great. Thank you very much. Let's move to Stalana and take her final thoughts about the day and the session.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I listen all of you, and I was smiling because everyone has advice. And you know what? I don't have advice because I didn't find balance in my life. And what I want to say to women, it's normal. It's absolutely normal because I keep comparing myself to other women. It doesn't matter in which country I live. I said, oh, she's doing much better than me. She's more successful in career or at work or with her children. We constantly compare us to moms that do not work and say how lucky they are. And then that mom comes and compares to us and say how lucky they are to work. So that's what I'm trying to say, and the same, it's related to countries. Women from developing countries saying, oh, how lucky women in developed countries, they can go to work, they can do career. And we sometimes, and myself saying, oh, how lucky they are. They can spend their time with kids and husband and just cook and go to the forest, sing and enjoy themselves. There is no answer on this question. And that's what I want to say. Just enjoy your life. If you want to say no to your career and become a mom, just become a mom. If you want to, become a new Bill Gates, just become a Bill Gates. Just be happy. And it's normal. And, to be mom, it's also career. To be general manager, it is career. There is no, you cannot explain what career is. So from my side, I wish everyone a good evening and say, do not be guilty. We're all in the same boat, and I'm sure we will do well and we'll come to the right, to the right pitch, our direction.
This is the most amazing ending of any panel I can see from your side. Thank you very much. Let's move to Asma and take the closing remarks.
Well, my closing remarks are again directed towards women only. We need to further understand what can be from our side and then compare it what is expected given all the differences that come through cultures and social values and civilizations and our education and learnings. Our social conditioning definitely plays a bigger part. But again, this is our social conditioning only, which gives us a rationality to decide what we want to pursue. And as the earlier panelist said, yes, whatever one decides, whether it is a career, whether it is a career as well as a family together, one needs to be happy and contented about what one has decided. So again, clarity of thoughts with women themselves. If they understand their true value, only then they will be able to communicate that value to others, and then things definitely will become easier. So I think women has still a lot to be done themselves in terms of deciding, in terms of prioritizing, and then deciding what they really want to do and how they want to see themselves be valued by others. So I think that's
That's great. I think this is a lovely comment, and there are so many questions which are still to ask, and I really want to ask these questions. So, what is the most appropriate ways to take you another panel in next event, and let's address these. And Asma, I am really obliged that you are not feeling well and you managed to come online and share your thoughts. This is really amazing, and I'm really thankful to all of you who really took out your time. I'm sure it's not easy to take out the time and share the value with the society and with the women. I'm really, really obliged, and I'm looking forward to see you in my next events. And as this COVID restrictions, everything will finish, we will do some um, on onshore physical events where we can meet each other and interact more and more in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So with this, we will
Thank you
move
so
towards
much.
the another section. We have a very beautiful speaker. She is a robotic. She is from an industry which is growing robotics in the medical sciences, where we have robotic surgeries, robotic machines. So, Dr. Ruchi Dana is a medical robotic surgeon. She's an entrepreneur, and she got the Forbes Power Businesswoman Award and Next Generation Leader 2017 and 2019. We are very much honored to have you on board. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musa. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
That's good. So, Doctor, would you like to introduce yourself? I give you just a formal introduction, but people would like to know about your robotics and what's new about it, and of course for you, and what is your success story, how you develop yourselves in a business leader. Please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much. So, I'm Dr. Ruchi Dana. I'm a medical doctor and a Stanford MBA. So, I was born and raised in the Middle East. I was born in Libya. And then, when the Libyan sanctions happened, our family moved to Dubai. So, I did part of my schooling from Libya, part of it from Dubai. And for my medical college, I went to India. And then during my medical college days, I was working a lot on low cost medical devices. I was really fond of innovating and working on new devices on my own. I was the first student of my university to get travel grants to go abroad and present papers, publish papers. I was really excited because it's usually the professors who get these grants to go abroad and present papers. And I really wanted to commercialize these devices. But what happened was that when I came back to India and I wanted to start my own company, I realized there was not enough people to support and guide, and that was back in 2007 and 2008. So even the startup ecosystem in India hadn't developed very well, especially in medical colleges. Even the best of professors didn't really understand the language of business. So it's a very high risk thing to actually leave the clinical profession and go and start a company and become an entrepreneur. So I decided to go for an MBA. I applied to various business schools. I got through into almost all of them. I got a full scholarship from MIT. But when the Stanford results came, I immediately chose Stanford, mainly because of the focus on entrepreneurship. And also, Stanford has a Stanford Biodesign program. So what happens there is that it's at the intersection of various disciplines. So you have doctors, engineers, lawyers, PhD students, MBA students. Everybody comes together to solve for unmet clinical needs. So that was really exciting. So one of the best things about this program is that the kind of solutions that come out of it are really affordable, and they are applicable to the majority of the developing countries as well. So my team actually won the NIH grant from the US government. I led a trip to China, and we worked on a lot of unmet clinical needs. And we worked on some ENT instruments as well. So that was really exciting. And since then, I've been involved in medical devices all through my life. I'm currently working on a low-cost robotic surgery platform. It's for it's developing intelligent, agile, and affordable robots, mainly for the knee replacement surgeries, which is a very common surgery these days, and shoulder replacement surgeries, hip replacement surgeries. I would definitely love to talk about it, but I think like today's topic is much more relevant for women, and I would like to, and since it's the month of October, I would like to focus a little bit more on women's health and how it's so important to focus on your own health. Recently, I was going through a documentary by BBC which said that around 17,000 women die each year in Pakistan because of breast cancer. And like the real results is maybe more than 40,000. It's just in the documentary, like the reported figure was 17,000. So, if you go down to the deep cause of this death of women by breast cancer in Pakistan or in India or in the developing countries, one of the main reasons for this is like it's like almost like a taboo subject to talk about breast cancer and talk about like these things, especially like if it's a young female and she feels a lump in her breast, it's very difficult for her to convey the message to her family. And because it's not a very open culture, and they find it very, very difficult to think about even speaking to their immediate family members about this. And once the family members come to know, like maybe the mother comes to know, she hides it further from like the other family members. So it's like a very, very difficult situation in which like these women find themselves in. And what happens is like the more delay they come across in terms of like going to get medical help, the more advanced the cancer becomes. So what happens is like almost like maybe more than 80% of the cases are just ignored, and they reach like a late stage, and that's what causes like a lot of burden on the healthcare system. So a lot of grief to the families, a lot of hardship to the families as well. But it's all about like the culture, about how you make the culture much more open, and how you make the people much more aware about their own health. So in this month of October, I'm actually supporting one NGO which is actually doing like breast cancer screening in the remotest villages of India. And how they're able to do it is because of a new advancement in technology. They're using AI to actually screen the women in the villages itself. Because what happens is like once a woman comes to feel a lump and she wants to go for a mammography, what happens is like she would have to leave her kids behind and go to the city and get a mammogram done, and there's a huge waiting line, and she might have to stay in a hotel, and all of these things are problems that people come across. And especially in villages, it's really difficult to leave your kids behind, your entire family behind, and go to the city for an entire day or couple of days and all of that. So what this startup is doing, I'll just share my screen and go through the, yeah, I think you can see the screen. So that's the kind of papers and all that I worked on, the Stanford Biodesign program, how I went to China for the trip, and then I've got some good recognition and all. But I like to focus mainly on how frugal innovation is so important, because like if you can talk about all of the advancements in technology like robotics, AI, and all of that, but like if it's not for the benefit of the developing world, or if it's not for the benefit of the people on the ground, then what's it of use, right? Like you can just play with these things in the lab, but like if it's not for use for the entire like customers, like your patients or the doctors in the villages and all that, it's really of not much use. So this particular company is basically using AI for detection of breast cancer at a very low cost. How do they do it? They're using a normal laptop, and they have a camera. It's a thermal mammogram with the help of which like they can set up these like mobile units even in the mobile vans that go to the villages, or they can set it up in a small room in a village and just put the curtains and all, and it's a very private scenario, so like people feel comfortable in getting their checkups done. And with the help of this, you can actually screen women in the villages themselves, so you don't need the woman to go to the city and get their checkup done and leave their kids behind. And then like there's also a lot of taboo about this subject. So I think these are the kind of innovations that we should all support. This is a very low cost solution. Similarly, there are many other low cost solutions like this which can actually help in like changing the entire scenario of how like healthcare happens in these countries. Because like if you talk about developing countries, you can talk about like the best of solutions, but if they're not able to reach to the end population, then it doesn't really make sense of like doing this entire work in a clinic. Because what happens is, like, there was a recent study about how Google was using AI to actually diagnose diabetic retinopathy and all, and it was working perfectly. But when it came to a clinical situation, it didn't really work, because like the situation in the clinics is completely different than what happens in the lab. Because in the lab you're working with perfect pictures, perfect images and all of that, and you can really do something. But if when you come to the clinics and you rely on like the nurses or like the compounders and all to take the images would never be the best of quality, right? So the AI would fail in such situations. So it's really important for us to understand the scenario. And also, if there are some audience like who come from corporates and all, it's really important for corporates and governments to support such projects. Because like if even if we have like young entrepreneurs who want to solve this situation, it's really important for those young entrepreneurs to cooperate with the corporations or the government or hospitals and all to make their startups a success. Because like you can dream about things and dream about solutions, but if it's not being like replicated in the real world scenario, then these things don't really actually work. Because like the clinical way how these images work is completely different than what happens in the lab. So I'd request like all the corporates that are there looking at this slide, please try to understand that it's like there's so many dreams that these young entrepreneurs have, when it's really important to have like them pilot in the corporates, have pilot projects with the hospitals, with the governments for maybe 3 months, 6 months, something like that. But like that would actually bring about a lot of change in the entire ecosystem, not just in the startups ecosystem, but even in the healthcare ecosystem. Because like if you ignore such diseases like breast cancer, and if you wait for it for the last stage, like stage 3 and stage 4, then it becomes a huge burden on the families, on the hospitals, on the entire economy as well. So it's really important to try to support such young and frugal innovations. So this is a slide on frugal innovation. So if you talk about like the best of solutions that actually work in these villages or the rural areas of the developing countries, they are the solutions that focus on one core problem. You don't have to have like so many solutions for so many things. You just have to focus on one small little problem and work on a solution for that problem. Because it's really important to focus on that unmet clinical need which is there, and that's how you'll actually get the customers, get people to use it, get the right kind of adoption as well. So with that, I'd like to end this presentation, that learning never exhausts the mind. If you put your mind to something, and then there's nothing that can actually stop you. I was listening to the previous panel about like productivity and time management. I think like there were some very good skills that were shared there. I would ask everybody to actually focus on those skills, because like that actually brings you a lot of change in your lives. For example, these days, in days of lockdown, like you don't have to commute to your workplace, and also you can actually manage your time in a much more efficient way. For example, like plan your calendar in a way that you can actually put in exercise blocks for exercise in the morning or in the evening, maybe with your kids, maybe with your husband or the family. Because like these are, I think like we are living in times in which like efficiency has actually grown up a little bit, because you don't have to commute, you don't have like a lot of things that are uncertain, because you know like this is when your day starts, this is when your day ends, these are the things that you have planned out in the day. You don't have to think about how much time will be lost in traffic or in the travel and all of that. So I think like we should all focus on this, and especially in this month of October, you should try to focus on your own health and see whatever you can do for your own health, for your family's health. And also like if it's a time to give back to the society as well, because there's so many people who are facing these kind of issues in the villages, and it's really important to find out like one cause that you would really want to support, and go for it.
Thank you, Dr. Rochi. It's really insightful, and I can relate your talks because Berkeley Healthcare is specialized in minimum invasive surgery, and we have a very nice robotic surgeon on board. And hopefully, very soon, we are going to have a full show on women health, healthcare, where we are going to introduce this robotics. And I would definitely would love to have you in one more time, and you can share more insights about it. And I want to thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to see you more and more in our next shows.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musa. Thank you.
So with this, we will move to our next session. I want to introduce you the lady behind Musa Sheikh Global Foundation and Berkeley Middle East and Berkeley Me Holding. Please welcome Khalood Shaban. She is the CEO of Berkeley Middle East and Berkeley Global. She's looking around the Middle East and UK and Europe region. Khalood, how are you feeling
I'm
today?
feeling very excited and
Such a lovely speakers and such a lovely talks. I'm always amazed with the beautiful talent, and I'm sure this is all your effort. Your team is really doing a great job, and I definitely want to give my closing, because then I will give the mic to you and you can have the show onwards. So I feel that women in developing countries still need a lot of focus, and the women from the globe actually can create this focus, can help them, because they don't have sound, they don't have language, they don't have courage, and even they don't have a thought that world has changed. Women need to study. It's an equal contribution. You're talking about entrepreneurship, you are talking about leadership, you're talking about free healthcare, free education, which is their basic right, which Europe, US, UK has already achieved over the years. So why these women are still not have achieved? That is the sound that we want to be, and I'm sure the policymakers and the ruling elite will look into that enough. It's they should deliver it. This is the priority, and there is no excuse accepted for these late deliveries. So, with this, my closing remarks, I want to thank you very much for having me, and for your such lovely efforts. And Mike is with you now.
thank you, Dr. Musa, for your great effort and all the speakers. And now I would like to welcome my next panel speakers and thank them for taking time to participate in this panel, and to our audience who's watching us for being part of our event. And mostly I would like, of course, to thank Berkeley team for making this event possible. So I would like to introduce myself. I'm Khulud Shaban, CEO of Berkeley Middle East and co-chair of Berkeley Investors Club. This panel, which I will be moderating today, is about women innovation and policies to support the empowerment of women and girls. So women currently represent a powerful yet untapped talent. There is a huge opportunity to boost the economies by gathering more women innovating in businesses. So our objective today is to know what are the challenges and barriers to women entrepreneurs and innovators. How can they overcome these challenges, and what is the role of the governments, the laws and policies in forming this change? So today our speakers are joining from different parts of the world. They hold a wealth of multifaceted experiences in law, innovation, economics, policies, and even armed forces. So they touched and changed a lot of people's life for the better. And they came today to share their insights. I would like now to allow our speakers to start by sharing us part of their journey and to introduce themselves. Anissa, please start.
Hello everyone. I am located in the city of Orlando in the United States. As an attorney, I provide concierge general counsel services to technology companies worldwide on matters of blockchain and financial technology, corporate transactions, intellectual property, and securities. I am a leading educator and academic on the intersection of law and emerging technology for the Florida Bar Association, as well as at select universities and conferences where I often speak on emerging tech topics such as market cannibalism at the National Press Club or the Cryptocurrency Act of 2020 on Capitol Hill. I enjoy serving as a business law mentor to Orlando's Technology Accelerator and also as a director on the Florida Blockchain Business Association and several Florida Bar committees. In my undergraduate studies at Wright State University, I was first introduced to the broader subject of international diplomacy and human rights, which captured my heart. So from there, I went on to acquire a Juris Doctorate at the University of Dayton School of Law with the hopes of pursuing a career in human rights. When I passed the Florida Bar exam 17 years ago and first became licensed, my first job was as a criminal defense attorney for the indigent. And this was the most incredible experience of my career. During that time, I represented a Guatemalan migrant worker who later changed the course of my life in the most unexpected way. This young man worked in the fields of my home state of Florida, where he was exploited to pick tomatoes for slave wages. While on his way to Western Union to send home the money that he had so carefully guarded back in Guatemala, he was stopped by the police and he was arrested for literally no valid reason. When the police searched him as part of the arrest, the officer found the cash on his body. And he said, "You're a Guatemalan migrant worker. You shouldn't have this much money. Obviously, it's for drugs." And the officer took the money that young man worked so hard to save up. While discussing this with my client in preparation for his case before the criminal court, I learned that he couldn't keep his money in a bank account because he didn't have the proper government identification to open one. As his attorney, I was able to get the criminal charges dropped, but I didn't have the authority from the state back then to demand back his money. Although this incident happened many years ago, and I have long since moved into international business law and technology as a practicing attorney, I've never forgotten about my Guatemalan client. His story has always troubled me until a few years ago when I discovered the solution in blockchain while preparing a lecture for the Florida Bar. For this reason, I took several courses on blockchain and financial technology at Oxford Said Business School, where I'm now a proud alumna. During those Oxford studies, I distinctly pursued the subjects of identity and financial inclusion and how these are essential to opportunity. And since then, I have been working diligently to push for access to education and resources for those who need it most. As I listen to the stories of the women here today, I feel really honored and deeply humbled to be included among them. Thank you so much for inviting me and the opportunity to participate in today's conference.
Thank you, Anissa. Thank you. We are really lucky to have such a multi-talent with us. And I would like to Nuha now to introduce herself. You're on mute, Nuha.
Apologies.
Great.
So,
no worries.
Good morning, everyone, and it's really a pleasure to be here. I'm Noha Hefni, and I'm the founder and CEO of People of Impact. It is a social impact, innovation, and consulting firm. And my background is really a long journey of 20 years working across 3 different sectors. So I started my career with the United Nations, working in the field, in the humanitarian field, in the field of refugee protection. I was one of the only Arab women on the field in East Sudan and south of Algeria back at the time in 2 humanitarian operations, reuniting refugees who are separated by war and conflict, and also assisting people to return to their country after a peace process. So apart from that, I've obviously engaged a lot with women, survivors of violence, coming to different countries on the borders, assessing their asylum status. I've also worked for UNESCO in the field of education and for UN Women on gender equality and women empowerment with a focus on economic empowerment and enhancing the role of women in peace and security. On another level, I also pivoted my career into the corporate sector at some point, working for PepsiCo and McKinsey, heading 2 regional departments for communications. And at PepsiCo, I was fortunate to actually also head social responsibility. And as part of that, I had a very strong focus on social entrepreneurship, on education, on addressing and combating hunger, which actually led me a couple of years after to initiate, my work in the entrepreneurial sector. So I started a startup called Lit that was focused on social marketing, followed by another startup called She is Arab, which is focused on enhancing the role of women in leadership and ensuring gender parity on speaking panels. And today I run this social impact consulting firm. So I'm very pleased to be here and to contribute to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Noha, for being here. Thank you. Wendy, can you give us an introduction about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I am Wendy Brown. I am a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserves, and currently I am stationed in Stuttgart, Germany. In maybe about a year or so, I plan to retire. So I have started a new company called Conquer Confidently. So I'm very glad to be here. And what I really do want to stress on is what it takes to be a leader. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to actually train to become a leader, to lead people, and to lead missions. So one of my most challenging times was probably the time when I was in Afghanistan, leading in a combat zone. I was in Afghanistan for about 18 months, and I had a mission as far as just taking care of some equipment. I'll keep it very high visibility. But I did encounter several obstacles and challenges, but I did implement certain techniques and actions that I will discuss later on in this show on how to make it through. Sometimes you just have to just buckle down, do what you have to do to get through. And even when you feel that some people are treating you differently because you are a woman, you hone in on your female feline leadership and you get the job done. So I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you. We will come back to more details about this. So, Ithar, can you tell us more about you? Ithar? Can you hear me? Ithar? Ithar cannot hear. Okay, we can come back to Ithar after Ella. Ella, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, Lud. I can hear you very well. Thank you for the invitation.
The connection to. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, Ithar.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we'll come back to you. Yes. Okay, Ithar, please. We can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you, first of all, for having us all here. It's really lovely being part of this. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. We can hear you. Okay, we will come back to you, Ithar. Let's Ella introduce herself until Ithar can fix her internet problems. Yeah.
Good evening, Khulud. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me well? Right. Wonderful. Lovely. Great pleasure being with you this evening. I am based out of Dubai. I have been here for the last 6 years, originally from Belgium. I am a women entrepreneur and an advisor to the Metis Institute, which is the think tank with a special focus on envisioning the dispute resolution of the future and on assisting with court reform. I've been working for the past 15 years in policy, legal advisory work, and administrative reform projects. And I've had previous appointments at the European Parliament, the United Nations, and have overseen projects in Europe, the US, Central Asia. And have, like some of our other panel contributors, I have been based in Kabul, Afghanistan for 5 years, where I drafted the new competition law for the country and contributed to the trade policy, as well as helped design the first alternative dispute resolution center for commercial disputes. Since 2014, I then moved on to Dubai, where I joined the DIFC courts and led the design and the launch of the wills and probate registry, with drafting of its legal basis. And then I led the consultancy work to set up the common law English language commercial court and center in Kazakhstan, in its new international financial center. And since recently, I am basically independent consultant, but working also with the Measures Institute, assisting further reform projects around the world. And it is a great pleasure being with you ladies this evening and contributing to the discussion, and seeing what new insights we can bring to the table and hopefully engender some new ideas and policies for the benefit of women, and for the world in general.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mireille, can you, dear, introduce yourself?
Yes, so good afternoon for me. It's good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here and to participate, and bring my insight to the discussion today. My name is Mireille. I'm based in Perth in Australia. I'm the managing director of MT Energy Resources. My background is in petroleum engineering. I'm a petroleum engineer by background. I've worked in the oil and gas industry for 25 years now across 4 continents, and dealing with projects of different ranges in gas projects and oil projects, from $1 million project to $1 billion projects. So really had a good experience there. The last 5 years been a full-time entrepreneur, still in the oil and gas industry, but also moving more into technology. I'm also consulting for for a technology and multimedia company called Gimski as their PR and also brand market strategist. And so that's something that I really, enjoy, because it's a woman company, a woman in technology company, and mature woman company. And we are actually going into competition with, against company like Zoom, Skype, Netflix, and the like. So it's still, startup, but that's the objective. So a good challenge there. And I've been doing a lot of work as well, empowerment work for women, especially in non-traditional industry where they are minorities, actually. So that's been really, my focus as well the last few years, just making sure that, I empower women and girls in STEM. I've started a project, a program in Uganda, and also here for indigenous women to get into STEM. So it's been running very well, and the objective is to empower 1 million women and girls by 2025. So really looking forward to exchange and share my experience today.
Great, thank you, Mireille. And I would like to see Ithar, if she fixed her Ithar. So Ithar can maybe introduce next. Once we start the questions, she can introduce herself. Interesting start, everyone, with this great expertise with us today. So I would like to start by asking my first question. So Wendy, Women in military surely face unique challenges. Can you share with us your experience in this and how a woman can rise above her fears to unleash her inner powers and to achieve her goals and take the lead?
Okay, so the one quality that is absolutely necessary to be an effective leader is self-confidence. Having self-confidence is the foundation of leadership. So with that, you would then implement about 3 major steps. The first step is doing a baseline, which is pretty much like a self-assessment of your strengths and things that that I would consider some of your challenges. I hate to call them weaknesses. I don't deal with weakness. It's strength and challenges, okay? And then you look at the task in hand. What is in demand in the world? What is in demand in your industry? What skill you need to have? And then the third step is you would then have action steps that would take you from your strength and tie it into that technical skill or the skill set that you're trying to learn. And so one thing that I do, and I've done this through my 20 years of experience in the military, you actually draw out a plan of how to use your strength and how to execute it appropriately in the military, or to complete a mission, I should say, for those that are listening, assuming that you're not in the military. And then and with your confidence, as you begin to execute the different tasks, the different assignments to complete the mission, it really does increase your self-confidence. And I would tell you, when your self-confidence is high and you're able to execute a mission or a goal or a target at hand, people notice. People will notice when you're a winner, when you're actually getting things done on time, effectively, better than everyone else. They notice it. Excellence cannot go ignored. So you first start off with the self-confidence. You then do a self-assessment, honest self-assessment on your strength and your challenges. Look and see what then you determine what the objective is, the goal, the task, the mission, and then you develop a plan to execute your strengths and how to get the job done. And as you're doing that, people will notice. And even if they don't notice, you can remind them as you are giving presentations on what you're able to bring to the table. When you do this over a consistent time, meaning over year after year after year, your leadership skills cannot go undenied. They cannot go undenied, I should say.
Yeah, true. They say women always are the second people to jump for opportunities after men. Yeah. So this is practically what you were explaining, that self-confidence is the place where they should start, and self-assessment where they can see what skills they miss, and then they will be confident to stand for these opportunities and grab them, right?
Correct. And do it over and over and over again where it becomes your natural personality. Because like I said, I've been in the military over 20 years. It is very natural for me to walk into a situation, assess it, see where I can contribute the best, and then get started. Another thing, I don't wait for people to tell me when to start. I get started. I get things moving. I have a momentum. People feel momentum when you're self-confident, and you will become a leader. Even if your title doesn't say you're a leader, your energy will say you're a leader. And you will be one of the people known as an influential leader. You don't need a title to be a leader. You just need that. You need the action, the confidence, and the attitude to exudes leadership to be a leader. And those are actually called influential leaders.
Yes. Thank you, Indy. Thank you very much. So, Mireille, I would like to ask you, now that technology has entered in every aspect of our lives, so what are the opportunities that technology can unlock for a woman entrepreneur and innovator, practically, particularly in developing countries?
I think, I mean, we know that, especially in developing countries, there's a need to improve the status of women and promote the role of women a little bit more, especially when we look at sustainable development and really, you know, pushing countries to be competitive. And technology is at you know, it's at the core of everything right now. We are in the fourth industrial revolution, and technology really takes center stage, and it's crucial for women all around the world, and especially in developing countries where they have quite a lot of challenges, to be able to capitalize on that as you know, as much as they can. But you know, what I really want to point out first is, you know, those challenges that women have, you know, in developing countries, which are, you know, first of all, being an entrepreneur in those developing countries is quite a challenge, because entrepreneurship is mostly attributed to men, so there's a tough competition for them. And also, what we see is that there's also limited funding for them to start businesses, and they don't have access to any of the loans, because most of the women are actually, the business that they start are mostly in the informal sector, and they also not into the big businesses that actually gonna attract, you know, those banks or investors to invest into their businesses. And then on top of that, you have the work-life balance, which is an issue as well, because women actually, you know, even when they are entrepreneur, when they work, they still have this workload at home that they have to manage, take care of the family, take care of the husband, when, you know, on top of, you know, being an entrepreneur. And there's also the support system that can actually be missing for them, in terms of, you know, making sure that they are supported with the family and in other areas. And one key thing is also the lack of education. Even when, you know, they start those businesses, it's more by necessity, and they don't really, you know, go through a specific education, either financial or really understand how a business must be run. And there's also the difficulty to access the internet, and that's where the technology actually comes in, because with the technology, what's going on is that, you know, you basically, if you can have access to technology, you can transform the dynamic, the social economic in the country, by giving the opportunity to those women not only to educate themselves, you know, using the internet, if they can access the internet, educate themselves and make sure that they understand the finance of, you know, running a business, or even, you know, understand how to use technology to increase their productivity. So that's one key area where technology can have a huge impact. There's also the access to funding. There's a lot of financial tools now that technology actually provide for a lot of the small businesses, where, and I talk about small businesses because most women in those developing countries are actually more into, they're more managed small businesses. So that's also another key they can have access to. I've seen, for example, in area like in Cameroon, they're starting to use cryptocurrency to actually deal, locally. There's also they can use their mobile phone to pay, or have their customer to pay. So technology allow that, and this flexibility for them. And the other thing is that the technology is can also reduce the geographical access, because you can easily access, because sometimes they don't have role models, or they don't have access to the experts. So, but through technology, they can, through the internet, access some of the information, reach out to some expert, and have that, into and use that into their businesses, or into what they're trying to achieve, with their business, or even to innovate. The way innovate in the way that they're running their businesses as well. So really a lot of key aspect where technology can really help them. The work-life balance is another one where they can become digital entrepreneurs and work from home, so that they can at the same time manage the workload that they have at home. They don't necessarily need to go and go to an office and spend long hours, and lack the flexibility, and not get the work-life balance that is necessary. So I think I see that technology is actually a must if we really want to push women into entrepreneurship. Technology can also help them to bring new product quickly, and sell their products, in different environment, instead of just having, being really restricted by where they live, or the country where they are. Really have this opportunity to reach out to a new market, especially the e-commerce market, and really play a role as well in this market. So great, great prospect, great, potential for women, especially in developing country, to use technology to optimize what they're doing, and also to basically scale up in what their businesses, and get the opportunity to grow as well, because they can learn, they can be part of groups, because there's a lot of platform now who actually provide mentors and also coaches for free for women in developing countries, entrepreneurs. So there is it's a big platform for them to tap into, to be able to create value, and not only for themselves, but also for the community, for their countries, and in a way empower themselves economically, and really play a role in alleviating poverty. Because when we look at how poverty is, when we look at the statistic of poverty in developing countries, women are actually the group where poverty is actually quite a concern compared to men. So I think that's really where I see technology coming in and helping entrepreneur in developing countries.
Very insightful indeed, Mireille. And I believe like some of the positives of COVID-19, which is like another discussion, is that it opened a lot of people on technology, which more widely, and because most of the people start working from home, and this opened a new stream for employers and employees both, because employers start saving money, in this, and employees also start feeling comfort doing the work from the comfort of their homes. So this is true. Technology is indeed a big help in this. So next, Ella, I think we need to build an enabling environment for the empowerment of women and girls. And you being in public policy, law, and economy expert, I would like to know what kind of policies and support mechanisms are needed to further advance the support for women entrepreneurs and innovators.
Thank you very much, Khulud, for this question. I think some of the aspects have been addressed very well by our speakers in the other panel discussions, but I would like to just make a quick summary of sort of my beliefs and my experience in this regard. And for that, I would like to start with a joke, let's say, or on an easier tone. One of the running jokes is, how can you tell if someone is an entrepreneur? And the joke says, well, you don't need to worry, they'll tell you they are an entrepreneur. And I think if we look at women entrepreneurs, there is another very sound, sort of philosophy that goes around, is that women believe that the value of our lives is determined by what we do for others, not what we do for ourselves. So if you see women entrepreneurs, they come up with solutions for society, for certain sectors of the economy. And I believe that policymakers need to unlock the potential that women have, and they need to recognize that women are a heterogeneous group, not homogeneous, but heterogeneous, diverse, with many differences in their motivations, intentions, projects. And women have around the world what I call a latent entrepreneurial potential that is not quite fully realized as of yet. So as we're moving towards gender equality, as we're moving towards more and more women joining the work environment, when it comes to women entrepreneurs, there's still quite a lot of challenges. What are these challenges? Well, starting a business, discouraging certain social and cultural attitudes, you're changing those. We have, lower levels perhaps of entrepreneurial skills in the women's sort of entrepreneurship base, because they haven't had those skills taught to them. They have a higher difficulty in accessing startup financing. They have less networks to rely on. And then they also have the policy frameworks that perhaps not only that they don't encourage, they perhaps also sometimes discourage women in entrepreneurship. So there are so many traditional instruments that have been used indeed, as Mireille was saying, training, grants, to address some of those barriers. But we have to expand those because they haven't fully reached population, be it in developing or in developed countries. So now the world is moving onwards. There are new policy approaches that have come up to support women in entrepreneurship. Countries, for example, are exploring the potential to use public procurement to open up some market opportunities for women, to provide more support for growth-oriented women entrepreneurs, and dedicated business incubators, business accelerator programs, and to create really an infrastructure to provide women with what we call risk capital. So what can be done concretely by policymakers? You create cross-sector partnerships among stakeholders. What I'm talking about is realize that the responsibility doesn't only lie with public policymakers, with the state, but also with the private sector. Policies are also made within the private sector, within companies, within enterprises, okay? Then we also look at civil society, another very important aspect of society. Civil society such as the chambers of commerce that can help promote women's economic empowerment at local, regional level. Engage women strategically in core business operations, get them into a dialogue with the civil society to help create governance structures, enable women from the start to create, to build up their capacity, their economic assets and their human capital by providing them equal access to education. There I'm talking in particular about developing countries, and in the developed world, it's allowing women to access education in the STEM areas as opposed to the traditional educational areas. And then, of course, advocating for women's rights and opportunities through evidence-based communication and policy platforms. So what can the state do? Well, they can enact laws very important. Beyond policies, policies set the strategy. Where do we want to go in a specific amount of time, be it 1 year, 5 years. But after you've set up a policy, you have to then also follow suit with enacting laws that specify how a central or a local government may, for example, bring about certain subsidies or grants or funds or loans that can be dispersed. Codify that, so bring it in law and say, we want to bring in gender mainstreaming, we want to advance women's economic empowerment. We require that, for example, 50% of the fund recipients are women-owned or women-managed businesses. So by setting these quotas, you basically bring the women entrepreneurs to the forefront. Then you extend those policy initiatives to the private sector level. What do I mean by that? A company procurement policy can require that 50% of the outsourcing work will be done through women-owned or women-managed business. So the responsibility doesn't lie only with the government, also with the private sector. At the decision-taking level, again, bring women and ensure that companies actively seek to hire women for board positions, for decision-taking level positions, because that prepares them for entrepreneurship. Bring a quality support to help women access capital, access markets, access growth, give them counseling if need be, create a level playing field for women entrepreneurs that still face these unique obstacles in the business world, such as access to capital compared to men, because they don't have the network that men may have. And then, of course, in the developing countries, policies have to go beyond that. You have to target especially women who are, specific minority groups, women that are economically or socially disadvantaged, because they actually have the highest need to be entrepreneurs because they wouldn't otherwise access the job market. Empower them by allowing them access to free resources, free education, free counseling. And then you need legislation in those developed countries, for example, also to be enacted that stops violence and harassment against women. And men, of course, as well, because violence and harassment happens, for both genders. But really talk about this and bring it to the forefront of policymaking and of legislation. And then last but not least, conduct strategic communication and advocacy. Publish videos, publish reports, provide toolkits, public policy recommendations, inform women, inform your stakeholders about what the government has done so that they can access those programs, because otherwise they're fancy programs that only a minority of people would then access. So widely disseminate, make sure that the communication is right. And on that note, I think I've covered.
Great. You covered the very targeted points, and it was really insightful. Thank you, Ella. So, Anissa, can you please share us the input on the same, like what kind of policies and support mechanisms are needed to further advance the support for women entrepreneurs and innovators from your point of view?
Sure, absolutely. I think that Ella did an absolutely spectacular job of really setting the broader landscape for this question. And then she did an even a more amazing job of actually breaking it down and giving sector examples. So trying to just build a little bit on what Ella said, I think that notably the answer to this question is likely the same for both developed and undeveloped nations. And the United States, where I'm at, is no exception. So what we need are legislative mandates for gender equality in business, in education, and in all walks of life. It's really interesting that there are several studies that demonstrate that when women are included in decision-making positions of business management, those businesses make more money. Yet, in spite of the hard data that repeatedly demonstrates this fact, women are still lagging behind in appointments to leadership in publicly traded companies, and they aren't being paid as much as men are, even though their work more often results in greater profits to the business. The state of California in the United States and the European Union in particular have tackled this problem in some very progressive and encouraging ways. California has recently passed legislation that requires that all publicly traded companies with substantial operations in their state have a quota of women and minorities serving on the boards of those companies, depending on the size of the board. The response to this mandate has actually been really surprising and interesting for me to see. Many of my male colleagues adamantly oppose this. And when they call me up and say, hey, what do you think about this? And I say that I support it, well, they're not too happy with me. In fact, they've told me that they argue that an unqualified woman shouldn't be placed in a position where there's a more qualified man. This is the problem that we have, that there are still too many men that truly believe that women with the same or even better credentials are still less qualified than men. And so while I'm generally opposed to the addition of legislative mandates, when people don't do the right thing on their own, unfortunately, we have to resort to such measures to force necessary social changes in the pursuit of social justice and basic human rights. In contrast, it seems to me that the European Union is way more progressive in the embrace of gender equality. Earlier this year, the European Union passed regulations that require companies to report on how much they pay men and women in the same or similar positions. Generally, women in the EU are paid 16% less than men for the same work, and their pensions are 30% lower on average. The hope behind these regulations is that greater transparency will trigger corrections in wages. The UK has also passed similar rules that requires companies with more than 250 workers to also report on wages. Unfortunately, my home nation of the United States is nowhere near doing something similar, and I think all nations around the world need to copy this approach. Here in the US and in other countries, women are often the only parent in the home, working and raising children alone. When single mothers are not promoted and they are not paid what they're worth, it's not only demoralizing, but it places more families at greater risk of poverty and food insecurity. Although I'm an attorney in the United States, I have experienced this firsthand. More than once, I've been employed by companies with all male management, and they have openly paid me less than other men in the company who had less education and less relevant experience than me. When I made inquiries about this, in each instance, the CEO said straight to me that he could do whatever he wanted, and if I didn't like it, I could leave. But I was a single mother, and I had a child with special needs. I had law school loans to repay, and I felt seriously trapped. I was afraid that if I complained too loudly, that I might be fired. And then where would I be, and where would my children be? So in that time, I learned to be quiet and just take whatever I could get. Sadly, my previous experience is endemic to everyone, to women everywhere, because the men holding the power from yesterday still refuse to share it today. So for this reason, I believe that we must implement regulations that require the inclusion of women and equal pay for equal work. Thank you.
Thank you. This was really emotional, and it was great to hear this. And I hope women everywhere can stand up for themselves. And it's true that sometimes you get trapped, but I'm sure there's other times which you can actually stand and speak up for yourself. So building up on that, Noha, I would like to ask something also related to money matters. When it comes to the funding gap, women entrepreneurs have even more difficulties raising capital for their enterprises. Why do you think that is the case, and what can be done about it?
So thank you, Khulud, for the question. And I think everything that was said so far provides a great context and segue to this question. And I'd like to start with a couple of facts with regards to the disparity and disproportionate access of women to VC funding. So typically, throughout the years, VC money has always been distributed unequally between men and women. But as of the COVID-19 pandemic breakout, these numbers have been even further exasperated. So women's share of venture capital funding in 2018 stood at 2.2%. And in 2019, this figure rose to 2.7%, which constitutes 7.1% of venture capital deals. As of the outbreak of the pandemic, this 7.1% dropped to 4.3, which is a 40% decrease in the share of women globally to venture capitalist funding. So that just goes on to show you that there is a significant problem with a great magnitude that needs to be dealt with. Now, having said that, there are several reasons why women are not getting an equal share or greater share than men. So first of all, there are many misconceptions that men entrepreneurs are more trustworthy, financially savvy, and will bring more reliable returns amongst the investor community. And this is only natural when you have 89% of venture capitalists being men. So one solution for that is to have more women VCs, more women angel investors who take interest in women-led business, but also to educate the men as well who are in the investment fields around women-led businesses, because they have a completely different nature than men-driven businesses. The other thing is that there is lack of visibility to sources of funding. So even myself as a woman entrepreneur, if I want to seek funding for my venture today, I really don't know where to go. I hear of a lot of initiatives from many international organizations, but it's not clear how to apply, where to apply. And the available opportunities are usually very limited in funding, so they don't meet the requirements for a tech startup or a startup that would require significant funding. Another issue is that women startups, as someone mentioned earlier, they tend to be smaller. They operate in different sectors that are less capital intensive and less growth oriented. So mainly health, social work, and services. They're more risk averse, locally based, led by young women who want to make a difference. Again, this for investors seems to be looking like a risky deal. Women also tend to start businesses for completely different aspirations than men. So making more money is a bigger motivation for men to create a business than it is for women. Women are more motivated by purpose, by giving back to the community, by driving an interest or a hobby, which again always causes investors to worry that how long this passion is going to last for. And another very interesting number is that 16% of women-owned SMEs worldwide report dependence on bank loans as a source of capital versus 22% of those owned by men. So women are also part of the reason of not accessing finance. And the reason is women are reluctant to seek loans. Why? Because they think that they're going to be rejected. They're reluctant to ask for investor support because they feel that, oh my God, am I, the imposter syndrome. So am I good enough to access this financing? Am I going to secure that fund? Can I present effectively to an investor? But the reality is the numbers show that actually women-led businesses have been more effective in terms of their leadership than men, and have also resulted in higher returns than men-led businesses in many instances. So in terms of, there's so many more reasons and studies done to assert these facts, but, we need to think also of the solutions. And it is very clear that, the situation is not likely to change very soon. So I believe that us as women entrepreneurs need to stand up for ourselves, and we need to create caring alliances in the sense that, we need to invest in each other. And what I mean by that, I've been, pitching in my business together with another consultant who does similar work. And by doing that, we generate common sources of funds for each other's businesses. So these caring alliances can drive us forward in generating revenue. Number two, in terms of financing, I think organic funding, which is coming from family and friends, has been, yes, not necessarily reaching the same amounts as we get from investors, but again, is also a more secure way to have 100% control of our business and not to be controlled by an investor. So I think we should continue to ask for this support from family and friends, and many times around as simplistic as it sounds, I know many of my friends who will not even ask their sister or their brother for that kind of funding. Now, there is also the rise, of crowdfunding and also new sources of funding through grants from government. And I think this should be encouraged in the form of, competitions or grants from donors, especially for social enterprises that are merging very well the profit and the purpose and can access those grants. But at the end of the day, what we need is really a more flexible policy environment that eases, the financial barriers on women-led businesses. We need policies that give us greater access to capital for all SMEs, and especially women-led SMEs. We need to address the issue of cost and time to register a business, to open a bank account. This is always a struggle in many developing markets. We need to undertake research to understand what women are reporting as these barriers, because there are a lot of studies, but they are not always representing a large proportion of the women population, and also not highlighting all the challenges. And last but not least, women's voices need to be heard in policy formulation. So I really encourage a two-way dialogue in developing policies, developing future frameworks to support women-led business funding. For financial institutions as well, there is a great role to play. So, considering the growth of markets that women-owned enterprises provide, and look at this as an exponential market opportunity. In the region alone, this is a 2.7 trillion, economic opportunity for growth. And it's not a nice to do, it's a must do that requires support from all parties. And lastly, I think building on Wendy's earlier point, I think the solution is with women themselves to step up, to lead, to ask for support, and not to shy away or think that they are less deserving of funding from investors. This is the true unlock that will drive us forward, because the inequality has been there, is likely to continue, and it will take a long time to change policies, but it will take a much shorter time for us to step up and stand together as one, asking for access to finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noha. It's true, the mindset, this is what I always emphasize on, the mindset, it should be changed. The change should start with the women themselves, because they are always hesitant. They calculate everything. We calculate even the smallest thing. We look to the smallest details. So we have just to have the courage to stand up for ourselves, and we should have this confidence. I believe it will come from educating ourselves and get all the tasks and talents and which we need in order to run whatever plan we have. So Ella, I would like your input on the same question, when it comes to funding gap, women entrepreneurs have more difficulty. Can you tell from your point of view?
Yes, thank you, Khulud. I will keep this one short because Noha did a great job at explaining already many of the facets. So I'd like to start off with some interesting statistics, because we were talking about developing countries. Angola, an African country, has more than 40% of adult women engaged in entrepreneurial activities. Whereas in terms of developed countries, you have Chile as the developed country with most female entrepreneurs, standing at 32%. There is also good news from our region, from the GCC, where the share of female entrepreneurs exceeded the male rate. In Saudi Arabia, for example, last year, you had almost 15% women entrepreneurs compared to 13.4% male. The UAE is at almost 13% as well, so it's close to Saudi's leading figures. And unfortunately, if we look at many of the developed nations in Europe, they have very low rates of female entrepreneurs. They're in the single digits, according to studies. So what do these figures tell us? Women obviously are still underrepresented as the population of entrepreneurs. They tend to operate in these smaller, less dynamic businesses than men. And they are likely to operate in the non-capital intensive sectors, such as personnel, services, which have a lower potential for generating a high sustainable income. And then if we look at countries like the US, which has a very, very strong entrepreneurial culture, only 2% of the venture capital was given to all women founding teams, and less than 2% of the US private equity firms are female owned. However, women businesses do not fare worse than men's businesses, quite the contrary. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and very encouraging times have come upon us now recently. I think also with COVID, we've realized the potential of technology. We can look beyond the barriers of our nations. If we look for funding, we can go international nowadays. Recently, Goldman Sachs has launched an initiative where they would invest 500 million in of GS's firms and clients' capital in private, late-stage women-founded, women-owned, or women-led enterprises. So that includes directly funding companies as well as seeding women investment managers who are starting their own funds. That's very promising. So we're looking at what the private sector is doing. Again, if I go back to public sector, many countries unfortunately still have to develop viable national stimulus packages for small companies. And again, they have to include quotas for female-owned businesses. What other challenges exist? I think that the barriers are more invisible than just the access to money. If you go into a VC fund, if you look at the type of questions asked by investors to women, they would, of course, the questions being very highly associated with the amount of funding that is then acquired, there is a gender bias there. So male entrepreneurs are probed with positive-led questions, promotion-oriented, whereas female entrepreneurs are asked negatively-led questions, such as, what is your plan B? Or do you have a risk assessment? What will you do if this fails, right? So what can women entrepreneurs do? As I said earlier, use technology, go beyond your borders, seek funding elsewhere if it's not available close to home. Please don't feel overwhelmed if you're in the minority. If you're the only woman amongst the men in a room, stakeholders will actually remember you. And being remembered is the first step, as performance and networks matter most. But being different, being a woman, also enhances visibility and can become a competitive advantage. Sometimes know when to take a step back. So when the context is not ready, don't force it. Some studies actually show that if you see that the potential client actually prefers men with you in the room, then bring in a male colleague to run that specific meeting or to be present in that meeting. Be smart and strategic about it, because ultimately, once you get the client and if you implement the work, you have the past performance, and then you can still be a women-led business. Attitude is also just as important as your skill is, as Wendy has very well explained to us. And then to finish on a positive note, as a women entrepreneur, keep believing in yourself, push your boundaries, and learn to say no sometimes to the client so that you can also, push the boundaries of revenue and make sure that you use your time intelligently.
Thank you, Ella. I believe the women need to learn how to say no in a lot of occasions, not only in front of the funding. It should be that women learn to say no for a lot of things. So, Wendy, I have met a lot of women entrepreneurs throughout my career, and many have confirmed that one of the barriers they faced is lack of support from other women. So what can women do today to support one another in entrepreneurship and in innovation?
I would say probably the main thing to do is to obtain a mentor. A mentor is a game changer. A mentor is someone you have a trusted relationship with, And that mentor has gone through several battles and several fights and have won. They are a proven success. So a mentor is not your friend. It's not somebody, you grew up with or somebody you knew back in the day. No, a mentor is someone who's been through the same trenches that you're going to go through, and they have won, and they also have connections and a wealth of a network of people. So when you have a very effective and efficient mentor, you also have access to their mentor and their resources. And I would say obtaining a mentor is a game changer, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're an employee in any industry. A mentor is just a game changer. When I was listening to Anissa's situation about the attorney, at the attorney office, immediately I'm thinking she didn't have a mentor. I don't know if you did, but it just came to my mind. She didn't have a mentor. Mentor would have fought for her and won. And that's what mentors do. So there are people of influence that have gone through the fight, that have gone through the trenches and won. They have a network of other influential people, and you have to hone in on that. One thing people that I notice, when I hear all these success stories, everybody talks about how hard they work and they did this and they did that. You know what they really don't talk about? Who their mentor was. Because sometimes they may feel like the mentor gets the credit. But however, you don't get to the top without a mentor. That is not my opinion. That's a fact. You don't get to the top without a mentor. A mentor can see what's going on. They can give you wise advice. It's almost like psychic. They'll tell you exactly what's going to happen, how it's going to play out, how you need to deal with this person, how you need to deal with that person, when to stay in the game, when to pull out of the game, when to go left, when to go right. My mentor, at one point, I thought my mentor was psychic because the advice this person was giving me was so on point. But they were very experienced, so they knew they had a very good idea of how things can play out. So just bottom line, answering your question, mentor is a game changer for any and everyone to become successful. And sometimes because women, we don't lack the confidence, let me just know the skill so well, they got to say yes. No, they can still say no. You have to, like I said, stated in the beginning, you have to develop the leadership. But once you get that leadership skill underway, you need to get a mentor. They go hand in hand because life does happen. Many times life is not fair. And people just want you to go only so high. And you're like, no, I want to go higher. That mentor will break that ceiling wall. Trust me. There have been many people that tried to, take me out of my game. And I hate to admit it, but many times it was other women. And, many times it was other women. But called on the mentor. Mentor gave me guidance, and I knew how to handle everything professionally, but effectively where I landed on my feet. So yes, I'm a lieutenant colonel today, and I smile and yay, go women. But I've been through hell. I've been through hell and back. Mentor gave me advice on and gave me direction on how to handle my negative situations. I always landed on my feet. So when people did try to destroy me, I know they're thinking, how did we not get her? They didn't know I had a mentor. And that's another thing. When you do get a mentor, don't tell anybody who it is, because then they know your game. But you keep that mentor in your back pocket. And that's really how you start working up the ladder, whether it's entrepreneur, whether it's, in any industry, or any community organization that you're in, that mentor is a game changer.
Wow, Wendy, great. Like a lot of practical life advices we are getting from Wendy today. It's great. And Anissa, I would like you to share us your experience in this matter. Like, what can women do today to advance and support one another in entrepreneurship and innovation?
Well, Khulud, you are going to think that Wendy and I have conspired to create this, flow of answers. I promise you, I did not talk to Wendy about this. No, you read my mail. You are psychic. So generally speaking, yes, women need to lend one to another their time, talent, and resources. But more specifically, there were two actions that I was going to talk about that women can take to advance and support one another. The first is to develop and operate programs of mentorship, and I'm going to get into that. And then the second is to shift our mindset from a place of scarcity or scarcity to one of abundance. So what do I mean by this? Well, I'm going to explain it by telling a little story, which is going to directly respond to what Wendy was asking, is about whether or not I had a mentor and maybe how that went. So I was raised in a very small village in the countryside of Middle America that actually did not support women in positions of leadership. Women were not permitted to teach adult men. And the women in my family were very strongly discouraged from working outside of the home. And even my own mother was not permitted to go to college or develop any kind of a career. I never saw any women at all holding any profession outside of teaching children until after I was in college. And so when I got my first job as a criminal defense attorney, I really did not understand what to do or how to act. So my first experience was with a woman mentor who was my supervising attorney 17 years ago. And it was a few months after I had started working there, I was promoted from defending smaller crimes into defending serious crimes called felonies. And this required me to move courtrooms. And so the day before I was supposed to appear for the first time in the new courtroom, my supervisor, this woman mentor, she came into my office and she sat down and she's like, all right, listen, we got to have a talk. She says, tomorrow you have two choices. She says, you know, all the people in the jail know all of the public defenders. And so they're going to know that you've been in misdemeanor all this time and now you're moving up to felony. And I was like, yeah, you know, I got that. She says, okay. So tomorrow, when you go to meet them for the first time in the holding cell behind the judge's chambers, you need to know they're going to threaten you. They're going to try to scare you, and they're going to do this so that you'll conflict off the case with the court, and then the judge will have to appoint them private counsel because they had this idea that public defenders were just pretending lawyers and that they wanted a private defense attorney and somehow they were better. And so she says, all right, so your choice is you can let them scare you, or you can put on your stilettos, you go in there, and you show them who's boss. And so, like, what was she talking about, right? So there's like this cultural thing here that, you know, if you don't feel strong on the inside, then as a woman, you put on your tallest heels. So you stand as tall as you can until you feel as strong as the inside as you are tall on the outside. So the very next day, I came to work in the only pair of stilettos that I owned. And now, 17 years later, whenever you can always tell when I'm feeling nervous or anxious because I'll have on like really tall heeled shoes, right? And so that stuck with me. And so I haven't had hardly any mentors during my career, even though I've needed them and I wish I had them. And this leads me to my second point, which is a mindset shift from scarcity to abundance. About 4 years ago, my daughter developed a health condition that required me to resign from my full-time job where I was general in-house counsel and chief technology officer to a technology company that had developed proprietary 3D video technology. And I actually had to pick up and move cities in order to seek specialized care for her. At that time, I was really frustrated with some of the continual barriers and obstacles I dealt with in the tech industry that I talked about a little bit earlier, where, you know, I wasn't getting equal pay for a lot more work, et cetera, et cetera. And so I decided that this was a really fantastic opportunity for me to shift my practice away from corporate and technology into immigration. And I wanted to do this because, remember, my first passion was human rights and serving the world's vulnerable. And I kind of missed that, you know, from formerly being a criminal defense attorney as well. So I flew across the country. I attended a week-long introductory course to immigration law, bought all the books. They're still sitting there on my shelf. And I set out to associate with other immigration attorneys in order to become competent. But every person I spoke to, and I spoke to a lot, including women, all said the exact same thing to me. They said, there is no way we are going to work with you. You'll just learn from us and you'll go out there and start up your own practice and you'll compete with me. I am not going to take that risk and enable you to be my competition. So you see, they had this mindset of scarcity, that there wasn't enough work to go around. And so they didn't want to mentor me into expanding my career into a new area of law. And so I said, okay, so I'm going to do what's coming in the door. And what kept coming in the door still was corporate law, right? Which is what I'm still doing today. So it's like a little bit of a spoiler alert to the end of the story. But what's interesting is that, you know, in corporate law, and as I was, you know, getting more involved with blockchain and financial technology and asking to do additional lectures and becoming a published academic, I ran into a couple of women like Wendy, right? And like Khulud, and like the other women here in this conference today. And you know what? They had a mindset of abundance. And they came to me and they said, wow, you know, you really know your stuff. And I've got this conference coming up. And why don't you come and you be on the panel? And why don't you talk to us about this? Or how about, you know, you help the tax law section of the Florida Bar Association publish an academic piece on the intersection of blockchain and tax issues in relationship to blockchain. And so I said yes to those opportunities. And those women that came alongside of me and joined arms with me and invited me in are incredibly successful. And because of both their mentorship and their mindset of abundance, I have had incredible opportunities open to me, and it's put me in a position to be able to mentor and open up opportunities for other women as well. And so it's really important that we operate from this mindset of abundance, because when we share, it comes back to us in multiplicity. It's some sort of strange universal promise. It's this universal law at work that when you give freely, it comes back to you in abundance. So my challenge to everyone watching today is that you mentor at least one person at any stage of their career. Freely share your contacts and your opportunities. If you do these two things, I guarantee it's going to come back to you in multiplicity. And moreover, it's going to produce greater joy and satisfaction and prosperity in new ways that you never imagined, that you would never otherwise have access to.
Thank you, Anissa. I believe everybody here today is somehow a mentor for every woman that is listening and getting a lot of insights and like guidance where she should go next. So thank you very much for everything and for all your talks. So Mireille, I want to ask you, we are in an era of media technology and innovative idea. So how can women brand themselves to transform their ideas and attract support, maybe investors, funding? So how do you think a woman can brand herself?
So, I mean, sometimes I think a lot of women get it really wrong, is that, branding is actually not about us, it's about, the customer that you're targeting. So it's important that, women understand, the market that they really want to target, what are, the unique, proposition that they have for this market, what kind of solution they trying to bring, to the market, and really understand what are the key players as well, because you really want to reach out to those players through networking. So networking is one thing that really women needs to be comfortable with, and I know that a lot of us I had to develop these skills, because before that, you always find an excuse because you have to take care of the family. So when there's an event, you always find the excuse of not being there. And yet that's where, you can have the opportunity to talk about, what you have to propose, the product, the service that you have, and really try to build this confidence with, people that you really want to reach out, or the investor that you want to connect with. So so networking is one thing, and another thing is for women to really build up on their negotiation skills. So understand that, and which is communication in a way. So understand that communication is key, and understand how they can actually negotiate to push, their products, and to make sure that, they create this environment where they're gonna bring those customer, or they're gonna bring those investors to invest into their products. Because when you look at the statistic, I was just curious to know exactly, what the weight of branding into a product, into how they select, the person or the company that they want to invest in. And it's quite a high statistic. 90% of investors actually prefer to go for company who are branded, because for them, it's reflect confidence, and they understand a little bit where they put their money. They understand really well where they put their money. So that's a key thing to look at. Really, make sure you know who are the key players, who are the investors. Find a way to connect with them. Do a research to know where they go and where you can connect with them, and sometimes it's better even in an informal setting. So don't just stay in your industry. Try to find out a network in your industry and outside your industry as well. And the other thing that is key, I think, and critical, is to make sure that we get the opportunity to talk about when we have an opportunity, wherever it presents itself. Be comfortable to talk about the products, what it can bring, the different accomplishment that we've had as an entrepreneur or as a company, and really promote ourselves, so that we create this confidence, and an investor actually also see it. Because what happened is, sometimes we just, as women, we're just waiting for people to recognize our work. We work really hard. We have tremendous products, but because we don't really talk about those products and don't show the passion, about what we've accomplished, we actually miss those opportunities. And that's part of the branding, really, where you go out there, you show your area of expertise, you build your brand, you really pay attention to what you really want to get out from the connection that you have. Be very strategic about it, and really be, always be there, and find an innovative way to bring your products on the market. And one thing that a lot of, I've seen a lot of women who've actually been able to brand themselves very well is really either write a book about what they're doing, about their products, so that they can position themselves as an expert, so that when they want to they go for funding, or when they want to attract a certain certain customers, it's basically a no-brainer, because they are the expert and people are ready to put money either to buy the product or to invest into their project. Another thing is to, just like what we do, really, take those opportunities to come and participate in forums where, we can position ourselves as expert. And that's, that's a key part in our branding as well. So all those things are really important. Have a clear understanding of the added value that the product brings, but also have a clear understanding of the market and who we are targeting, and what are the opportunity, what are the investors, opportunity for investment, and what are the investors, and how we can reach out to them, either through networking or through somebody that we know. And also make sure that we've talked about mentor and coaches, but I think sponsors are very important as well. Make sure that we had those sponsors that can actually talk about what we do and talk about the value that we bring when we're not in the room, and build on that in a way.
Great, thank you, Mireille. Yeah, I believe a woman should open her mind, and even I say, even if you don't think this meeting is important, go there with an open mind. You will get things out of it. So this is open mind, and networking is very important. Having relationships, I believe this is a very important step. Like you mentioned. So, Noha, a lot of women believe that being a woman has negatively impacted their careers. So, what do you think are the barriers that contribute towards creating this gender gap in innovation? And what are some of solutions to bridge this gap?
Yeah, so there are a number of reasons why this gap has been created and is being sustained, and many of which have been mentioned today on this panel. One is, the limited investment and the limited market awareness in innovation that meet the needs of women and are created by women. The second is that, the unconscious bias that Ella spoke about earlier in terms of when meeting with investor, etc. This unconscious bias exists also in the workplace, also in research, etc., and extends to several domains. And therefore, again, is an issue that has to be overcome through more awareness, through gender intelligence workshops that teach both men and women how to deal with one another and, overcome these biases. There's also a lack of gender disaggregated data. So, in order to allocate, tailor programs in the right way, make decisions in the right way, the data is sometimes not accurate, not present, especially in many developing countries and others. There is also the lack of finance, which we covered very extensively during the panel. There isn't also a sharing of best practices. So, you cannot access as a woman entrepreneur for learnings or lessons learned, many portals that are well known, to learn how to build your business, or following a similar case from another market. This could be something that is facilitated by governments or by entrepreneurship ecosystem players who are running accelerators, incubators, etc. Obviously, the underrepresentation of women, which is not only in innovation and entrepreneurship, but also in leadership and in several other fields, extends as well to the innovation field. And this has to do with cultural barriers, policy barriers, and many other reasons. One of the key things as well, which was touched upon by many of my fellow panelists, is the availability of role models. So in the tech sector or in the innovation sectors, there aren't many role models that are highlighted sufficiently or visible across the media, across conferences, and across dedicated platforms. So, for example, one of the startups that I had co-founded is called She is Arab, and it was all about highlighting Arab women role models across different sectors, including in technology. And the reason we wanted to do that is to inspire the future generation and the younger women to look up to women in very male-dominated sectors and see that they can also be successful if they give it a try. Last but not least, women in STEM remains a very long issue that needs to be tackled. And there you have several gaps. You have the gap in the education, the gap in the employment, in the retention, and then the founders gap. So again, women tech startups are less represented in education. For example, in the Arab world, the graduates reach up to 57% as STEM graduates who are women. However, when it comes to retention rates in the workplace, these numbers automatically, drop, and also representation in the labor force ends up dropping as well. So what can we do about that? There are so many things that can be done, including, promoting women role models, revisiting policies for workplace to be more inclusive. In the private sector, primarily, for example, you have a lack of measurement. So a lot of companies are starting to have gender equality strategies to be more inclusive of women and to promote women to the leadership level. But then the measurement for these strategies is almost non-existent. So how can we change that? And how can we get accurate data and reporting from different sectors, all tallied into the government level or the national level, I would say, to be able to tailor future solutions that can actually solve the problem and move the needle on gender equality.
Yeah, true. That's why we really depend on there being women in policies, so they can really stand up for the other women and support them in this. And these all thoughts were very insightful today. And I'm really thanking you all for joining this panel and giving all this beautiful life journeys of yours. And I would like you to give your closing remarks. So I will start with Wendy, your closing remarks for the day.
Okay, everyone, this has been a pleasure. I love to help people. I would love to stay in contact with those that would love to grow in leadership and confidence. You can email me at my personal email at onewendybrown@gmail.com. Again, that's the number one, Wendy, WENDI, Brown@gmail.com. I also have a website, Conquer Confidently, where I talk about how I help people exude and display their leadership. So please reach out to me. I love giving back to people and helping them along the way, because that's how I got to where I am today.
Thank you, Wendy, for this support. So this is an offer from Wendy to for all of you, in case you want any mentoring. She's ready to be your mentor. So next, Mireille.
So thank you, Khulud, for the opportunity, and thanks to all the panelists today. It's been amazing to be part of this this discussion and conversation. One of the key message that I want to leave the audience with is to understand that we need more women in STEM. And that's an important things to say, because I think women have the potential. They have the potential to be in those industries. It's just a matter, like Wendy was saying, a matter of being confident and having the right mindset to be able to start to use their skills. And there's so much talent available, and their creativity to create innovation and to really bring the STEM sector to another level. So I really I want to let this message out there. I'm myself doing a lot of empowerment work, created a few platforms to be able to bring this message and make sure that women start to be very confident, embrace STEM, and understand that STEM is actually an important way. Being in STEM is an important way for them to access those high-paying jobs, so to empower themselves economically and eventually play, a much bigger role into the economy and really bring, the sustainability that we're looking for.
Thank you, Mireille. Thank you for joining us today. Ella, can you give us your closing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Khulud. Yes, very short note from my end. I think we need to also not underestimate the fact that we've done a great progress in the last decades as women, and that society is recognizing our efforts as well as our and rewarding our successes. So we have to have faith, remain hopeful, remain joyful, and prosper. And that we should look for male ambassadors to help us in our further quests as well, because without the support of the other 50% of the population, we won't be reaching very far. So I encourage all of you to talk tomorrow and the days after about what you've heard today to your fellow friends, colleagues, networks, women and male, and share our stories and our insights, because otherwise it will be lost. And of course, happy to stay in touch with everybody and hopefully create something together. And
thank you, dear Ella. Thank you very much for the invitation. Anissa, your closing remarks.
Sure, thank you, Khulud. So I'd like to close with a how. How do you start from the beginning where you're discouraged from seeking an education and working from outside the home to where I've come today, which is I was just a month ago awarded the globally recognized Stevie Business Award for Solo Female Entrepreneur of the Year. How do you do that? And how you start from here and go to here, it starts with a vision. You have to have a vision, you have to have a hope, and you have to have faith. So what is that one thing that you keep turning back to when you're left alone? What is that thing that you think about? What is that fire that is within you that you focus on when you have a little bit of extra time? Usually that indicates that that's a passion. So if you can visualize and identify what your vision is and your hope is for yourself, maybe for your children or your family or your community, then it's about charting a path to get there. This time in your life is going to pass no matter how you spend it, whether you spend it watching Netflix or baking cakes or helping your sister with her kids or whatever it is. And so make sure that as that time passes, that you're taking those baby steps. You're eating that elephant one bite at a time, which is a saying that we have here. How you accomplish a gargantuan task is one tiny bite at a time, or baby steps along the way. And then what you'll find is that your vision of your passion and the realization of that starts to change and morph a little bit, and that's okay. In the business world and in startups, we call those pivots, and pivots are to be expected. And so persevere through these obstacles. Keep going. No matter what you do, don't stop going. Continue that forward progress towards your vision. And if you do that, then you'll find that on the other side of that period of time, you'll have achieved so much more than you ever thought you could. If you want to talk to me more, my name, as you can see in the banner, Anessa Allen Santos. Just look me up on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter, and I'll be happy to chat with you.
Well said indeed, Anissa. Vision, they say vision lead the leader, and set the road for the leader, actually. So in order to lead, you need a vision, and this is great. Thank you very much for joining us, Anissa, today.
Thank you.
And I would like Noha now to share her last thoughts for today.
Yes. Thank you very much for today. This was an amazing panel, and I want to close by saying that women inclusion and innovation is a strategic business priority, and it should be looked as a market opportunity. It is not a nice to do on the side of business or on the side. It is a must do to unlock an economic opportunity. Second, social innovation, and women who are driving social innovation are the enablers of the future if we enable them through technology. So I hope that they can receive more support. And lastly, the most important way for us women entrepreneurs to move forward is to have other women supporting us and to have a tribe of women who believe in us and who can push us forward into the future. Thank you very much.
Started by having you all here to share all your ideas with all the audience. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, audience, for watching us. And you can watch the recorded event on YouTube soon. Thank you very much and have a great night.